Hello, you are listening to A Woman's Guide, Episode 1. Have you been sexually abused? Do you still see yourself through the lens of past trauma? Have you defined yourself by it? Today's episode is, now that you've survived, do you know who you are? Stay tuned. This is A Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Wholeness After Sexual Abuse. For all of you listening, welcome to the show. I am Simone, your confidant and guide. Thank you for tuning in. So, hello everyone, first of all. This is my first episode, as you can see, and very excited. Not that sexual abuse is exciting, but I'm excited and humbled to do this project because this is something that I've been wanting to do for some time now. And I did not have the courage to do it before, and I wasn't ready to do it before, but I think I am now. So I'm doing it. This is a very personal subject. As you may guess, I have been sexually abused. And if I may, I will tell you a little bit about my story, and then we can get into the rest of what it is that I want to say about this show. Okay? So, I was sexually abused at the age of 12 years old by my eldest brother. He's 3 years my senior. Okay? And he was someone that I did not know growing up. I didn't know that he existed until about the age of 8. Okay, he's my half brother. He has a different father from me, and he was living in a different country from me at the time that I met him. Okay, he was visiting from Jamaica. That's where he was from, and I live in Toronto, Canada, right now. So he came to visit at that time, which was in another city. It wasn't in Toronto, Canada, but it was in another city close to Toronto. And the first moment that I met him, I did not like him. I felt very off around him. I did not like his vibe. As young as I was, I think I was about 8 years old. As young as I was, I didn't like him. Okay? I didn't have a good feeling about him. I felt like something was off about him and his demeanor or his energy. There was something that was very wrong about him. And that proved to be, later on, with the events that happened, it proved that I was right and my instinct was right. My instinct was right at such a young age. I knew that I didn't like him. And, I mean, when you're a child, there's not really much you can do about that, because if someone is your sibling and you have to get along with them. So, he did go back to Jamaica because he was just visiting. And then my mother, there's some circumstances that were surrounding the fact that she was here and he was there in that country, and why he was not raised here in this country. This is some different, very convoluted and complex things that went on with that. But I'm not going to get too deep. I'm not going to get into that because I don't think it's really relevant. But anyway, needless to say, my mom did file for him to come here to live for good. And I think I was about 9, so it was probably just about a year or two after. So he came down, and, I still didn't like him. I still didn't have a good feeling about him. But, eventually I got used to him. I got used to his presence. I softened up a bit around him, and I thought he softened up around me. But, he was a very strange kid. Like I said, I was about 9 at that time, and he was 3 years my senior, so about 12 years old. He was a very strange kid. He was very troublesome. He made a lot of trouble. He gave my parents a lot of grief. He was very selfish. He was very manipulative. He was a pathological liar. He did not tell the truth about anything. He just had all of these signs of someone who really just didn't care about anybody but himself. And I know for sure, looking back, that he really had a really traumatic childhood that enabled him to be that way, because he was not a upstanding person. Okay, as young as he was just, his energy was very disturbing. So anyway, we did move to Toronto, which is where I now reside, about the age of 10. And as I grew up, as I grew up, and I think I hit about the age of 12. That's when the abuse started. I did see signs of him, you know, I guess having more of a hypersexuality, different things that he watched on TV, and he just had this demeanor like he was just very, very sexual. So anyway, it started as a lot of these abuses start, where it is very almost benign, or I wouldn't even quite say innocent, but it was something that was very small. And like, I think he slapped my bum or he pinched my bum at some point, but it escalated and it got really, it got a little bit more serious. And the more it continued, it got really, really bad. But he was my brother. I grew to love him. I respected him. I never learned about, I never had the sex talk with my mother. So she never told me about rape or molestation. I didn't know about that stuff. The closest I came to knowing about sexuality and sex education was that she gave me some books to read about it. And even in those books, I read that sexuality or rape or molestation or abuse, I just read about it happening with strangers. I don't think it really was emphasized that families or a family member can rape or molest or sexually abuse another family member. So I really didn't know. And I also, because of the culture that I'm in, our culture, the Jamaican culture that I have, they're very hush-hush about certain things. They do not like to talk about things like that are uncomfortable, that are taboo. And of course, for most people, most cultures, it's a taboo thing. It's not something that is, people want to talk about. But I noticed that specifically with Caribbean culture, it's not spoken about readily. And that's going to be another subject that I'm going to be talking about within this show, is cultural beliefs and ideals, and what that has, and the bearing that it has on recovery and those who survive sexual abuse. But anyway, needless to say, I just didn't know. I didn't know, and I was young, and my mind was not developed enough to know that what he was doing was wrong, because I loved him, I respected him. And when something like that happens to you, your mind can't handle that. Your mind cannot grasp the profoundness of that experience. And had you grasped that understanding of what was happening to you in the moment, you would have died. I'm pretty sure I would have died if I had not had a defense mechanism, or if I had not coped in a way where I just could not see what was happening. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been able to handle it, and I would have died. I believe that. I believe the mind is an amazing thing, and it does what it does to protect you. It does what it does to protect you. But anyway, what I'm saying about that, the abuse, is that it went on for a while. It went on for, I think, it started out and it wasn't so calm. It did not happen so often, and then it just got worse, and it got more and more excessive, and it got more and more frequent, and it happened at night when my parents were asleep. Everyone was asleep in the house, and he would come into my room, and then he would do whatever it is that he wanted done. And, it got out of hand. I mean, it really, I wouldn't say it got out of hand. It was already out of hand from the very beginning, but it got worse. And there was actually a time where I did say to him, I fought him off somewhat. I fought him off somewhat. I just said, you know what, I don't want to do this. I want to sleep, because this was during the night and I had to go to school the next day. I was only in middle school. I was only in middle school when this happened, so I wanted to go, I had to go to sleep and go to school the next day, and he was relentless. I really didn't have a choice, and this was something that I learned within, this is something that I learned from my psychologist that I later saw, as I dealt with the abuse, that, I really didn't have a choice. Although it wasn't done in an aggressive and violent way, it was still, I did not have a choice. There was an illusion that I had a choice, but I really didn't have a choice, because he wouldn't leave me alone. And the times that I actually started to fight back, or, say, I don't want to do this, or, take myself away from it, or remove myself from it, he wouldn't have it. He would hound me, he would dog me about it, he would rip the sheets off of my bed, he would continually go in and out of my room until I did what it is that he wanted me to do. So I did not have a choice. I absolutely did not have a choice. So that's the sad part. That's the sad part. But I think it stopped. Not I think it stopped, but it stopped when I was about, what age was I? I was about 14 or so. And he moved out. And he moved in with his girlfriend. And I was relieved. I mean, I was relieved that it stopped. But at the end of the day, because I grew an attachment to him, I had what people call Stockholm Syndrome, where you attach yourself to your offender. You attach yourself. It's the ego's mind of gaining back control of an uncontrollable situation. So you begin to attach yourself to that person. So I was relieved that it stopped, but at the same time I was extremely depressed because he was gone. So it was a very confusing time for me. I think that was a time that I grew the most angry. I was very, very angry. I mean, even as it was happening, even as the abuse was happening, I was very, very angry. I became very angry. I was very rageful. I withdrew. I isolated myself. I stayed in my bedroom. Most of the time after school, I'd just come home and I would stay in my bed all day. My relationship with my parents suffered. My relationship with my youngest brother suffered. I was very mean to him. I was very abusive to him physically. And it was a bad situation. So the time that he left, between the time that he left the house and because I repressed it, I put it to the back of my mind, because of course I thought that it was my fault as well. I just kept it to myself. I repressed it and I kept it to myself. Between the time that it stopped and I came out with that secret, or let's just say that I had no choice but to deal with it, I was suffering a lot. I was going through a lot. I was very, very depressed. I'd rarely come out of my room. I would cry all the time. My emotions were out of whack. They were crazy. I was rageful. I'd get triggered very, very easily. My relationships with the opposite sex suffered a lot. I did not have a lot of relationships. In fact, very, very, very few relationships. I couldn't get sexually involved so much with the opposite sex because I was so defensive, and I was so distrustful of them, Understandably so, because of what my brother did to me. That was the first sexual experience I had, and it was something that I didn't choose, and it was something that I didn't want. And it just makes you clam up, and it makes you close down and shut down. But at the same time, I was very provocative. I dressed very provocatively, but I was not promiscuous. So that sent a lot of false signals out there. I would have people call me slut and hoe and, oh, you're a bitch and, you must be easy. And I had all of these people judging me, and that hurt me even more because of how I already felt about myself. I felt dirty. I felt worthless. I felt awful about myself. I hated myself. I resented my life. I resented him. I would sabotage myself with everything. I would not let myself shine. I would not let myself be given praise and compliments. It wreaked havoc on me so much, on my emotions and my associations with people, and the way that I treated myself. That was the biggest thing, the way that I treated myself. I had so much hate for myself. I had so much disdain for myself. And it's amazing because it's like when you're still in that stage, your mind cannot make the connection between what you went through and the reason and your current state of feeling. It cannot make that association. So I did not associate that. I did not associate that. I just knew that I hated my life and I was absolutely depressed. Absolutely depressed. And my friends, they would say, "Oh, you're so angry. Why are you so angry?" And, people would say, "Oh, you're so rude and you're such a bitch. And why are you such a bitch?" And it hurt me because I was just angry. That's all I felt. I felt was anger. I felt rage, and, so it was, I suffered a lot. My self-esteem suffered a lot. And there was a lot of things I prevented myself from doing because I felt like I wasn't worthy. I was not worthy. I still had those layers of feeling disgusting, layers of feeling shameful, feeling no good, feeling just like trash, ultimately. So anyway, I'll explain to you how I came to terms with this. So anyway, this was about 2008, and I was watching a show on TV. It was the Oprah show, and I remember that day so clearly because it was a pivotal day. I watched the show, and it was based off of the movie Precious. For those of you who know Precious, you know that is a very riveting movie. If you've watched it, it's a very riveting movie about a mother who abuses her daughter. And the actress who was Monique, she explained to Oprah that she was abused as a child by her eldest brother upon answering the question of Oprah, because Oprah was asking her, how did you dig in so deep to draw out those emotions? And she said, well, it was because of my brother Gerald. I hope that's his name, but she said that because of the anger that she felt of being abused, that's how she was able to act that role with such, power. And so that triggered something inside of me. I cannot even explain what happened. It was just like an activation of everything that I felt, while I was being abused, and all the shame and the horror and the anger. And I started having flashbacks and things started popping up in my mind. I was going ballistic. I went crazy. I felt like I was going crazy. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was constantly shaking. Every time I'd go to bed, I would see something flying into my mind, and it drove me crazy. And at this time, I was still speaking to my eldest brother because I repressed what happened. And of course, like a lot of abusers, they go on and act as if they didn't do anything, right? So I decided to call him very early in the morning. I mean, this was like very early, like 6 o'clock in the morning. I decided to call him because I said, Leighton, because that's his name. I need to talk to you because I'm going crazy. I need to talk to you about something. And he said, okay. And then he came by, and then I said to him, I'm having all these flashbacks of what happened when I was younger, and what you did to me or what I did to you. And I was speaking as though I was an equal participant, but I wasn't. because I hadn't gotten to the point where I realized that I was raped and that I was abused and I was taken advantage of. So, and this is very, very common for a lot of people who have gone through abuse. So anyway, so I told him that I was going absolutely crazy, and he was looking at me like I was absolutely crazy, like I didn't know what I was talking about. I even told him about some of the things that happened, and he was looking at me like, oh, I didn't know that I did that, or, acting very stupid, feigning stupidity, acting like he didn't know what I was speaking about. And he just said, well, I was just experimenting, or some weird explanation for what happened. Oh, I was experimenting, or I just wanted to experiment with this and that. And of course, that's no excuse. What you did was abuse, but I didn't know it at that time. I just know I wanted that icky, disgusting, bad feeling to come off of me. I just wanted it gone. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. My mind was not strong enough at that moment to realize that what he did was rape. But I know that he knew that what he did was wrong, because the look on his face described to me that he knew that what he did was wrong. He knew it. Okay, so I think he said something about, well, I guess I'm going to have to take this to my grave or something like that. I'm not sure if he said that. I think he said something like that, but anyway, I couldn't really I didn't really understand what he meant at that point, because like I said, my mind was blocked. It was still blocked. And then he said, okay, at the end, he said, well, if you ever need to talk about this, then I'm here to talk to you about this. But that didn't settle my mind, and that didn't make me feel better. I knew something inside of me was telling me that, there's something that you need to know. There's something you need to address. So I let him go off and go about his business, and I did not feel better. I was continually shaking. I still couldn't eat. I still couldn't concentrate. My mind was just filled with all these images and things that were going on. And I was just like, it got to the point where I felt like I wanted to vomit. Like I literally felt like there was something I had to get rid of. So I went to my mother and I told her, because I was living with her, and I said, there's something that I need to tell you about. And I was so ashamed, and I felt like garbage, and I was saying, I don't think you're going to love me anymore, because I told her what happened, and I said that I did this with, Leighton, and I was just so ashamed, and I felt so disgusting about telling her this. And she's like, well, Simone, things happen. This was before I really told her how frequently that this act was happening. It was happening very frequently. But before, she said to me, well, things happen. Little kids or kids experiment with other kids' bodies, and you know what I mean? Things happen like that between siblings sometimes when they're very, very young, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. But then as I continued to explain to her what happened, or how frequently it happened, or what he did, and because of the way that I was showing and demonstrating how I felt about it, she could see that something was wrong, something was off. She said, but how often did that happen? And how many times did that happen? And I told her. And then she said, but that was abuse. And something broke. Something just hit me when I heard that. She was like, that was abuse, Simone. That was not experimenting or, something that kids do now and then with each other. That was abuse. That was absolute abuse. So, needless to say, that just completely broke me. I was totally devastated. I was totally devastated. And that's what sparked everything. That's really what sparked everything. So that night, I was just, because it dawned on me, the truth of that experience, it dawned on me. It dawned on me that I was abused. And it was just the worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. In fact, I would say that it was worse than the actual abuse, because it was everything compounded, compacted, everything festered, and just the realization that the brother that I love so much abused me this way. He took advantage of me this way. And I knew, it's weird because you're in that situation and you know what's happening. You're physically experiencing it, but your mind does not allow you to know that this is something traumatic, and this is something totally wrong, especially when you're that at that young of an age. I was 12, so my mind wasn't developed yet. My mind was not fully developed to that point. My brother, he was older and he knew better. He knew better. He just didn't care. And like I explained to you, that he was not someone to care about other people's feelings. He had kind of like a sociopathic tendency, sociopathic tendencies. He didn't care about anybody but himself. And now in retrospect, and I do, not that it matters why he did it or when he did it or how many times he did it. It does not matter if it's once or 20 times. It does not matter if it was 30 seconds or an hour. It does not matter. But now that I think back, I really believe that he abused me to get back at my mother. Because, and something just tells me that, wisdom just tells me that, because he grew up without her. For his formative years, he grew up without her. But there's a very good reason for that. There's a very good explanation for that. It wasn't something about abandonment because she wanted to abandon him. It wasn't anything like that. That's a totally different story. That's not something that I'm going to get into. But the point is that because possibly he was dealing with so many emotions and so many things that he could not, I guess, fathom, and he couldn't articulate. But there was a lot of resentment and there was a lot of anger toward his mother. And I think because he came down and he saw his mother with her own family, and I was her daughter, and I don't know how he was thinking, but I believe that he did that because he wanted to get back at my mother. He knew better. He absolutely knew a lot better. He knew a lot more. When you're at that age, you have a conscience. You know that what you're doing is wrong, but you don't care that what you're doing is wrong. Because if he did not know what he was doing was wrong, and I'm telling you this, and this could help you possibly, if he knew, or if he had no understanding of what he was doing as being wrong, okay, he would have abused me in public. He would have abused me in public. He would not have waited for my parents to have gone to bed to abuse me. He would have not waited for the whole house to be quiet, for it to be dark, so that he can take his opportunity to get what it is that he wanted. So he knew. He knew what he did was wrong. And, it's really a sad story. It's really a sad thing. But I no longer see myself as a victim. I no longer see myself as a victim. But needless to say, I mean, because of that situation, I didn't even explain that I confronted him about it after that realization that, okay, it's abuse. So this is the second time around now. Now I had this understanding, okay, I was abused. You abused me. So I called him on the phone. I confronted him, and I called him on the phone. And this is how I know. This ties into directly what I'm saying about him knowing what he did was wrong. So I called him on the phone, and I said, I was screaming. I was just screaming my head off because I could not believe that I held in that type of emotion for so long, and I had this feeling that I knew that something was wrong, and I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't place it. I couldn't map it, and I held on to so much toxic emotions, and I went through so much to get to that point. So I let him have it. I was screaming, and I said, you abused me. You abused me. I can't believe you effing abused me. I'm screwed up. I have to go to therapy. I can't believe I'm going through all this. And that's when he started to break down and cry. And then he said, I'm so sorry, Simone. I'm so sorry. So, if he did not abuse me, I don't think he would have apologized. But I think he apologized because he got caught. He finally got caught. Like, he got caught, and he knew it was coming too. And I said, you know what, I can't see you again. I'm never going to see you again. I hate your guts. I was just going crazy because, of course, I mean, as you get that realization, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. So needless to say, I've never saw him ever since that year. I think it was 2008. I never saw him since then. And I'm glad. I don't regret it because I know that for the sake of my sanity, my well-being, and my recovery, I should not see him again. Okay, but I think, a day may come where possibly my path may cross with him, but, you know, he's not gonna be allowed back in my life. Absolutely not, because it's a very conflicting, confusing, convoluted thing with this sexual abuse, especially if it's something that's in your family or happened in your family. And I know for you who is listening to me, I know there is something that, most likely you have gone through sexual abuse, unless you're someone who wants to know more about sexual abuse. But I'm assuming that you've gone through sexual abuse, and it's a very confusing thing for those people who, for possibly if you have not gone through sexual abuse. It is a very hard thing to describe, and it's a very hard thing to let someone else know why it happened the way it happened. So I just know that, as I went through therapy and I, went through my process, and I had a really wonderful psychologist, and she helped me through that bump, that really huge hump or bump of coming out with it and dealing with all of that bottled up emotion. Let's just say that upheaval, just dealing with that, severe upheaval of stuff that came out. She helped me out. She really helped me out. And I began to learn, and I began to research, and I began to do my homework about this thing. And as I was going through my recovery, the initial recovery, I realized that, wow, you're not alone. You're not alone. I was not alone. I cannot believe that so many other people have gone through this stuff. So many women have gone through this. Because when you're a little girl, you think that it's you. I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one in the entire world that would go through this, that is going through it. I'm the nasty one. I'm the disgusting one. I'm a freak. I'm a slut. I came up with all these labels for myself. And especially because I'm a woman, or I'm a female, and there's all these labels that are put on us just because we're females. So when you've gone through sexual abuse and you're a female, it is extra painful, because you're already a woman, and there's already all these names for women. There's already all this stereotype about women. And then you go through sexual abuse, that's going to hurt your femininity. I mean, that's really going to damage your femininity, the way you see yourself as a woman. So with that said, I created this show for women because women need a lot of healing. We need a lot of healing, And I find that wherever I go and how many women I talk to, women are so hurt. They're so hurt. They're so angry. They're so sad. They're so hostile. They're just, women are in need of some real deep healing. And I'll explain to you what dawned on me that I needed to do this show about sexual abuse for women, okay? Because I was watching something on TV. I'm always watching something on TV. I love shows. I love TV shows, and I love just shows about things that interest me. Okay, so I was watching a show. This wasn't the Oprah show. This was the Ayan Levanzant Fix My Life. For those of you who haven't heard about it, Ayan Levanzant is a spiritual coach or spiritual teacher / life coach. She's very practical and very hands-on. She's amazing. I find she's amazing. And she was doing this episode about House of Healing for Women. And it was just about a bunch of women, a group of women who were behaving badly, who had emotional problems, who were wreaking havoc on their own lives. So what she did was she would ask all of them their story, so she can get down to the bottom of why they were behaving so badly. So, I mean, all of their stories were so riveting, but there's one story that stuck with me, and it just, I don't know what it did to me. It did something to me where she was talking to this lady who was very, very angry, very rageful. She was just a loose cannon. She was a loose cannon. She could barely hold herself together. She was very angry. She was just on the verge of destroying her life, absolutely destroying her life, had she continued down that path. So Ayana was trying to get down to what it was that made her so angry. So then as she continued to talk about her story, she revealed that she was abused. She was sexually abused. And oh my goodness, like she explained that she was sexually abused by someone, a friend of a family, go figure. She told her mom at some point, and her mom did not believe her. Her mom did not believe her, and or I cannot remember if her mom did not believe her or her mom shamed her for it, or said that, oh, you must have asked for it, or could he have raped you, or this. I don't know what exactly the angle to which what her mom said, but whatever her mom said, it was painful and it was invalidating of what she was saying to her mother. And the pouring out of the pouring out of pain that came from this woman, the pain that came from this woman, it was like, I can't even describe the feeling that I had, because I've listened to a lot of different stories about sexual abuse, but this one, it made me, I don't even know what it did to me. It made me so broken for this lady, because I could see myself in her, but no one believed her. And that's part of the reason why she was so angry, because no one believed her story. Her mother did not believe her story, and her mom must have been very, very hurt for her to say something so horrible to her daughter and not validate her emotions and validate her experience of being abused and molested by this man. So, Ayanla took her to the whacking room. This is something that she does to tell them to get their anger out. So she took her to the whacking room, and the emotion that was coming out of her, she was so upset. She was so angry, and I just saw myself, and I started to cry. And I saw Ayanla Vanzant, but I also saw myself, and I said to myself in that moment, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I said, that's me. I'm supposed to help women with sexual abuse. I said that to myself. I don't know what it is. I don't know what clicked. I just know that in that moment, I said, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Okay? Because these women are hurting. And I've gone through it too. And I just felt such a powerful moment in that. So that's what made me create this show for women, because of that. That's what sparked it. That specific show sparked it, of course, in addition to everything else that I went through. Because I know women need it. Women need this healing. We need this healing, okay? I can only speak from a woman's perspective. I can only speak from what it does to femininity to be sexually abused like that, to be dishonored like that, to have your body treated like that, okay? So I know that there are various other forms of information about this topic, but and I think there's really not a lot of podcasts about sexual abuse, very, very, like, specifically made about sexual abuse and for women. I don't think there's a lot. In fact, I think there's just one. I'm not sure. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I feel that on a very deep level this is needed, okay? So the perspective or the approach that I'm using on this podcast is a little bit more unique. I would say that it is a little bit different because my focus really is on personal development. I'm into personal development and making myself better and helping other people to achieve their best. But what it is it's tailored specifically to those who have gone through sexual abuse, those who have survived sexual abuse. Okay? It's peeling off those distortions and those lies and those residual emotions and imprints that develop directly from that. Okay? It's about unlocking the true three-part being of you, which is your body, mind, soul, or spirit, okay? using a little bit of spirituality, not religion, but spirituality in it. Okay, and I'm saying this because I believe that those of us who have gone through sexual abuse, and I know from my journey, um, I believe that there's just some special problems that we encounter, or like the problem is so deep and it's so ingrained and it's so traumatic that when you are trying to develop yourself and you go on and you find various forms of information to develop yourself, and I find that it's not enough. They don't focus enough on certain problems or certain things that we need more care for, or we need more attention to, or attention for. Okay, because someone who's gone through sexual molestation and rape, the trauma is deep, and there's certain things that are not just going to easily be fixed or easily be done. Okay, there needs to be more of a specialized type of thing that is done for people who have gone through sexual abuse. And that's what I'm about, because I've worked my butt off. I mean, I've absolutely worked my butt off to be the person I am today. I've taken a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, to really, progress on my recovery journey. But I don't think there's a ton of information that is specifically designed for sexual abuse, because I believe that some things that work out, some things that work for people who have not gone through that, who have not experienced it, it would most likely not be so effective for us. Okay, I can't really explain in detail what I mean, because I can't really recall, but I just know that there are some things that we need special attention and care to. Okay, we need that extra boost or that extra start for that. But I believe that this is needed for sure, and I am going to focus more on specific issues and break down certain information to and spend a little bit longer on certain information that we need most. Okay, for example, I'll give you an example. Is shame. That's a big one, huge one. I mean, I know there's other things about shame, but people don't really speak of shame from the perspective of sexual abuse. That kind of shame, that type of shame that you have when you've gone through sexual abuse. The rage that you go through, or the rage that you experience from sexual abuse, that needs to be focused on a little bit more. Trust issues with people, not even trusting yourself, learning to trust yourself more. Because as you go through because you've gone through that abuse, somehow it causes you not to trust yourself, because once again, we focus on ourselves and think that I'm the one who did wrong. So I'm the one who caused this on myself. So you start to not trust yourself in life because of what happened. Setting boundaries, which is a big one, because you're so used to being violated and you're used to being taken advantage of, you don't know how to say no to people. You have a very hard time saying no to other people because of what you were traumatized into being, which is a person without any personal power, making yourself feel safe. I'm just giving you a few. I'm just giving you a very few. I don't want to give away everything, but making yourself feel safe in situations where you are safe in. These type of things are not spoken about so much. I see things about sexual abuse, about how to recognize abuse or how to get over the actual trauma of that act, but no one tells you how to reorganize, redefine, renew your idea about yourself. Reclaiming your whole self, not just those pieces of you that were lost in the abuse, but I mean reclaiming every part of you that got sidetracked because of this abuse. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to explain it the best way I can. you know, because it's my idea and it's something that perhaps, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say here, but certain things need to be focused on more because of sexual abuse. It takes a special kind of information, or something needs to be focused on a little bit more because it's for someone who had experienced that trauma, and they have residual emotions and residual feelings, and their mind operates in a certain way because of that trauma. So anyway, let me go on. So the type of women that I think that this podcast um, will resonate the most with, I would say. But I mean, if you do not fit this criteria, then that's okay. It's not really a criteria, but I think that it's more for people who are in a different stage of recovery, where you've already dealt with the abuse. Okay, you've acknowledged that you've gone through it, you've accepted it, you know that it's abuse, you've already dealt with it within yourself. Most likely, maybe you've gone to therapy, maybe you went to a support group, you've talked to your family members about it, but the point is that you've gone through the initial stage already. So the surviving is gone. You're no longer in that survival mode. Survival mode doesn't necessarily mean that, you're in the actual abuse, but it means that you're it could be after the abuse, but you still feel like you're in this survival mode of, I can't explain it, PTSD, where you are you're still so traumatized that you feel like you're still in that survival mode. Okay, so you're past that survival mode, but now you're going on to thriving, but you don't know. There's this weird space, there's this awkward space where you don't necessarily know who you are, because you dealt with that, that's done, but because you define yourself by this abuse for so long, you don't know how to detach yourself from it. You know that there's more to you than that abuse. You know there's more to you than what you suffered. You know that there's more, but you don't know how to quite cut that tie yet. You don't know how to cut that attachment yet. So you're just trying to find who you really are. Okay? And you are working hard, or at least you're starting to work hard at reversing these things, but you're still kind of in that strange place where you don't quite know who you are. And you know there's more to you. And you're right. And if you're watching this, then, I believe that there's something inside of you that's telling you, yeah, there's more to me than that. There's more to me than that. And of course there's more to you than that. Okay? So the reason why I believe that sexual abuse survivors, not victims, need to reclaim their wholeness, women that need to reclaim their wholeness, is because a lot of the times, and I know this is experiential, and this is scientific as well, is that we start to define ourselves by what happened to us. It traumatizes us to the point where it becomes what we think we are. We define ourselves by this trauma. It becomes our self-identity. Okay? And even those toxic emotions that come from this abuse, we define ourselves by those emotions. We define ourselves by these emotions. So we lose our sense of self. We lose our sense of self. So, just like I said in the title, it's about reclaiming your wholeness, your whole self. Okay? And I say this because, from a scientific standpoint, when you have a traumatic experience, or when you're traumatized, it physically alters your brain. Physically. It literally physically alters your brain. It alters the trajectory of your brain. It changes the way that it functions. It changes the neurological pathways. It changes the circuits. It leaves imprints on your cells. So it physically, from a very physical level, it changes you. It changes the way you think. It changes the way you deal. It changes the way you function. It changes the way you think about yourself, about things. It literally changes you. So if that trauma is changing you, it's changing you into this thing that you think you are based off of what. Okay, let me explain myself again. It changes you to thinking that you are it. You are the trauma. You are the result of a trauma. You are the cause of the trauma. You are the emotions that are attached to the trauma. It's everything about the trauma. That's what you think you are. You think you are the trauma. Even if it's on a very subconscious thing, you may not think about it consciously, but you believe that you are the trauma. As I continue with this show, you'll understand more of what I'm saying. So anyway, of course, you cannot go within your brain. You cannot go inside of your brain and change back or undo, what happened to our mind based off of this trauma. Technology is not that advanced. And, of course, our minds and bodies are too complicated and too complex to even think that it will work anyway. So the only way for our minds to reverse these patterns, the only way to heal our minds and reverse these patterns and imprints, we have to redirect, the way that it's functioning. You have to redirect that. And of course, this is very complicated and complex. There's a lot of different elements to it. But we have to impress our minds with things that create a new function. It's literally like reversing a wheel. It's like reversing a wheel. Our mind is going a certain way, and it's been going a certain way for a long time, especially since that abuse. So we have to reverse that, the direction of the way that it's going. Okay? We have to create new pathways within our mind to reverse that trauma. There's many different ways to do this, and I think there's a myriad of ways to do this, but, listening to healing music, meditation, positive affirmations, because positive affirmations are creating a new pathway in your mind. Because as you have a trauma, you develop a new belief. You have a belief about yourself, and that has an imprint in your mind. And once that has an imprint, it's very hard to think otherwise unless you reverse that by using positive affirmations, for example. And I'll get more into that. You have to develop new habits and patterns. You have to develop new habits and patterns, because the mind literally changes as you develop new habits and patterns. Physically, your brain becomes altered as you develop new brain habits and patterns. Okay? Obviously, in opposition to what it is that you want to fix or heal. Okay? And I know so. Okay, the mind can heal itself, but sometimes we need to give it a little bit of help. That's why psychology is good. That's why, therapy is good. That's why we have these people who have been trained to help you reverse these traumas and reverse these patterns and these behaviors and reverse or change the way that your mind works, the way that your mind has been set to work, which is destructive, right? And I know so because you know what? There's a lot of things that I don't do anymore. There's a lot of ways that I don't act anymore. Of course, it's the healing process is very slow. It's a process. It takes time. But I know, and I know this is from experience, that you can literally heal your own mind. You can heal your own mind by what you're doing. It doesn't always have to be that way. It doesn't always have to be this way, the way it is, and maybe you do not like the way that you function or the way you behave, or maybe you don't like the fact that you're depressed all the time. You can literally change that. The mind can heal, okay? But what I'm saying is that we need to redefine, we need to reclaim our wholeness, okay? We need to reclaim it. And I'm saying in addition to, and this is another thing that I also want to incorporate, is spirituality, not religion. And I'll explain in my next video what I mean about spirituality and religion. But this is just an introduction to what it is that I'm trying to do, okay? But this is not just, okay, spirituality and this is, or it's just about these practical things. It's a combination. It's a combination. So spirituality, it's about, I think that there's just this force of this energy, particularly pertaining to how I've recovered, that helped to heal me. It helped to heal me. It helped to heal me, okay? And that's love. But I still worked very hard. I worked very hard. I bust my butt. Okay? In this life, you have to work for a lot of things that you get. But I still worked very hard to get as much progress as I've gotten. I've worked very, very hard. Okay? But there was something that was helping me through it. And I know that it's... you can't have one without the other. That's what I believe. So the times that I wanted to give up, the times that I just wanted to give up and commit suicide, and the times that I was helpless, I know the fact that I'm still here, believe me, there was something that was helping me get to this point. There was something that was helping me. Left to my own strength and my own mind, I don't think I would have been here. Most likely, I would not have been there. Okay? But we'll get more into that. We'll get more into that on the next episode. But I know that you can overcome anything. I know that you can overcome anything because I have gotten to this place and I did not imagine I'd get to this place. As screwed up as I was, I do not know how I got to this place. So I know that you can heal from anything. I know that you can do anything. I know the power that's within you because I know the power that's within me. Okay? There's nothing that can beat you. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast right now tells me that nothing beat you. Nothing beat you. You need to know how strong you are. If you've gotten to this point, trust me, you're strong. And you can make it all the way. You can make it all the way. So keep going. Keep going. And hopefully you'll continue to listen to this podcast or listen to what it is that I'm doing here and be inspired and be encouraged and find strength and continue on your journey, your healing journey, and rediscovering who you are. That is it for today. Thank you for listening to A Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Wholeness After Sexual Abuse. If you enjoyed this, you can subscribe to this podcast to hear more episodes. Next week, we will explore seeing abuse from a spiritual perspective. Be sure to tune in. Until next time, take care.